This is TWiT.
I read Paul's article. Well, let me see if I can get the quote here, because the salient quote is, "But there it is, even worse than I had expected, much worse, irresponsibly worse." What are you talking about, Paul?
Well, last week we were talking, remember I used the phrase or the word chatter to describe the feedback Mary Jo and I get about, you know, everything in life, but Windows 10 in particular, and how with this release that chatter has been overwhelmingly negative, or has been more negative than the last two releases, let's say. And I mentioned, I said, in some number of days, we will get some data to back up this assertion. Not the assertion being that this thing has rolled out a lot faster than the previous two updates. And that data came today in the form of an ad duplex report that said just that in less than 1 month, this thing is already installed on 50% of the Windows 10 PCs out in the world, which is an astonishing rate that is double that of the previous release and triple that of the release before that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why do you think Microsoft's pushing this out so fast?
I mean, we can only guess, but I think they have a certain level of confidence because of the success they had with those previous two releases. But I mean, again, you know, based on, I don't think it's fair to call this anecdotal data, but you know, based on what we see, I assume, I don't want to speak for Mary Jo, but certainly based on what I see, this release is a lot more problematic than the last two.
No, I would agree with you now. After having talked about it last week, I've heard from a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, you can look, there are outliers. I just heard from some guy who said, I have X number of PCs. I haven't seen a blue screen since Windows 8.1, you know? So that's what a unicorn looks like. You know, I'm sure he's not lying. I don't mean it like that, but that's an unusual experience. And you know, I don't mean to suggest that 1803 is problematic for most people. I just mean that the rate of error, the rate of problem is higher than the last two. It might still be a small percentage. It's just that every single one of those people writes to me.
So this ad duplex, is it reliable, these numbers?
So this goes back to my fitness thing. You know, it's consistent to itself, right? And so what ad duplex meant, use the data that they gather comes from store apps. And so there are large swaths of the population that probably are not getting measured here, especially in the enterprise.
Right.
But they've been doing this for years. And so we have 3 Windows 10 feature updates, major versions of data to look back on. They look at the different types of computers that are out in the world, so they always have interesting data around where computers from different manufacturers are and so forth. You know, back when Windows Phone was the thing, they had Windows Phone data as well. But this is interesting to me because, like, the way I phrase it is it's accurate to itself. I mean, it's as accurate as it's ever been, I guess.
It's consistent.
It's consistent.
But that doesn't necessarily mean when they say 50% of Windows 10 PCs in 1 month are running the spring update. That doesn't mean it actually is 50%. It's 50% of the ones they measure. However, when they do relative things like, you know, it's
twice as fast, 3 times as fast. Yeah, right. It's a fair measurement.
Right.
But look at the chart in his report that's below that shows you specific kinds of devices that are being upgraded, right? That's kind of interesting to me because it shows that not all Surface devices have been getting it. And it kind of makes the conspiracy theorist in me come out thinking, hey, maybe Microsoft knows it's problematic, so they're not pushing it to the Surface.
That's interesting. That's not what I thought you were going to say. Yeah, with the exception of Surface Laptop, most newer Surface devices are getting 1803 at a slightly faster rate than the rest of the industry, you know, than the average, right?
But not all of them, right?
No, not all of them.
Surface
but I mean,
books,
you know,
So Acer and Toshiba and Samsung significantly below average. Dell, Microsoft,
normal,
and MSI significantly above average. HP's kind of, Lenovo and Asus kind of close to the average.
Yep.
But I mean, and this is.
Look, I got to say, you can pick any one of those bars. That level of deployment after less than 1 month is astonishing.
Yeah, even Acer's 38%.
Even if you pick the smallest number, That's a crazy high number for 1 month. Yeah. Remember, well, we don't have to remember, but they have the data somewhere in here. It took 2 months, I think it was, for the Fall Creators Update, and then I think it was 3 months for the Creators Update, the original Creators Update, to hit those numbers. And both of those things, you can go back and see what we said about it at the time or what we wrote about it at the time. They seemed like they were heading up pretty fast, Yep. This is, I knew when we spoke last week that I would see data that kind of confirmed my contention that this is going out much faster than previous versions, because that's the chatter that we've received, that we've seen. I just didn't expect it to be this high. And like I wrote, I think it's irresponsible of Microsoft to pump this thing out so fast.
Why do you think they are? What is
sure they would disagree.
What is the...
Well, I think they want Windows as a service to just be something more commonplace and something accepted by users, where they just are like, okay, there's an update, I'm going to take it.
Right.
And just expect that it's going to be okay, right? And
is some of this
unfortunately, this time it wasn't.
This Apple envy, is it some of it coming from...
Well, I don't know. How does Apple do this? I guess they sort of do this. Apple releases one major Mac OS release a year. They're not all that major, but I think that's the proper way for these things to go. This release is less major than the last 2 or 3, if you will. It is also, we talked about this again. I have a hard time keeping straight what happens when, but they've changed the way the installer works so that most of it happens when you're online. And the period of time that you're down, which is one of those big complaints in the past, is much shorter. And so to the user, you could make the argument that Mary Jo just said, that this is basically to a user, it's just another update. It may take a little longer to reboot, obviously, because it's installing stuff, but it's not as bad as it used to be. It's not even close. So, real world, they're kind of moving it toward a model that would be more acceptable to people, where you might notice it less.
Although I'm looking at a report from today, Softpedia. They said there are reports coming in of people who have configured their machines to block the update who are getting it. And that happened with the last update too.
Really? Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. And they said Microsoft's investigating it. That's the part that makes people reticent to take this, right? They're like,
they'll have a handle on this problem within 2 or 3 months, folks. There'll be nothing to worry about. You just keep installing those updates, and we will figure it out.